I don't think I could put into words how much I love Repo Man, but in general, anything Alex Cox made in the 80s. I don't think I could name another science fiction film that has as much to say as Repo Man while still remaining as hilarious the entire time.
Come on.
This is Layla. Are you using a scrambler?
I can't hear you. I'm using a scrambler.
He does this by sometimes giving you what you want, sometimes subverting your expectations. He has jokes that are told through conversations and visually. Some things are ridiculous while others are thoughtful. You truly never know what's coming on the screen next, but none of the funny moments of the film seem forced, so they flow with the story and the characters. But the film feels almost like a live-action cartoon. While it's placed in America, there's a lot of surreal elements. Every item label says exactly what it is. It could be a box of mashed potatoes labeled mashed potatoes, or a can just labeled food. It adds an extra layer of removing itself from the reality of America, which is covered in corporate branding. Or when someone stumbles upon the trunk of the Chevy Malibu and all that's left of them is smoking boots. But the trunk also incorporates the use of golden light to represent an unknown object in a container as an almost homage to Kiss Me Deadly's light dispensing trunk. Repo Man has one of the craziest multi-story plots. Alex Cox weaves these stories together in long take shots that truly give life to the film, especially during each of the robberies. When Bud and Otto are picking up drinks, they're checked out by a nervous mute cashier. But as the transaction ends, he's still quiet. Bud and Otto leave, but as they do, the punks appear from under the counter, showing that they were holding him up the entire time. The scene completely changes, and he tells you the story with no camera movement or cuts. They show the second robbery and its ending, as they're leaving the store, but as they argue and stumble out, the camera remains. After a moment of stillness, as the robbers leave the frame, Bud and Otto come into the shop. But they don't completely realize that a robbery occurred, though the cashier isn't at the counter. But Cox doesn't use this to show an interaction between the robbers, but he introduces their competitors, the Rodriguez brothers, in many ways subverting your expectations at that moment. I could continue on about how amazing the visuals of this film are, but I'd be here all day. So I'm going to start with Otto, a directionless kid who rejects authority and can't keep a job working at a corporate grocery store. So while kicking a can, he stumbles into Bud. He tricks him into doing a repo job. He at first doesn't see him as a repo man. His friend Kevin brings up,
"There's fucking room to move as a fry cook, man. You know, I could be manager in 2 years. King. God."
Otto realizes that he needs to find something better than minimum wage jobs. He goes to his home to talk to his parents, who are glued to the television screen. They're in a trance watching a man preach. They tell Otto that they used their money to buy Bibles for El Salvador, that his parents have been brainwashed into devoting all their money to a televangelist, sending Bibles to further the indoctrination that they had received, continuing the proselytization of the developing world. So Otto realizes that he's going to have to be financially responsible for himself, so he decides to take up the offer to become a repo man. Now, Otto's introduced to two men who take him under his wing, Bud and Light. They have a dynamic of being two devils on Otto's shoulders. Bud creates structured rules for himself, which he calls the Repo Code.
It helps if you dress like a detective, too. Guys that make it are the guys that get in their cars at any time. That's why there ain't a repo man I know that don't take speed.
Action, let that vehicle or the personal contents thereof come to harm. It's what I call the Repo Code, kid. Don't forget it, etch it in your brain. Not many people got a code to live by anymore.
He lives in this rule system, a structured lifestyle, or as structured as it can be as a repo man. Bud believes that he is in the right if he is living by the code, that he is better than those that live outside of his chosen set of rules. As Otto worked mainly with Bud at first, he is thrust into this new world seeing Bud as his teacher. Following his lead, he knows no other way. He holds his opinion strongly, which leads him to his fetish for good credit.
Credit is a sacred trust.
I said, do you think they give a damn about their bills in Russia?
Bud states that he doesn't believe in a socialized economy, that he doesn't want a commie or a Christian in his car, that he doesn't like anyone that follows a code outside of his, but realistically, he doesn't believe in government.
You do something, Fletcher. Aren't you a cop or something?
Marlene, I'm on my coffee break.
Repo Man don't go running to the man, Marlene. Repo Man goes it alone.
In his way, having freedom is being alone, that he could fit in a society and receive the benefits that have been built, but he chooses to live on the outside, living by the laws that he chooses rather than those that are beset upon him. The perfect example of this is when he finally corners the Rodriguez brothers. Bud sees them as his enemy as they are both carjackers, but they don't follow the same rules, so Bud demonizes them. He threatens and attempts to attack them with the bat because it's justified since they don't follow the code. But he finds that this way of living isn't sustainable. The Rodriguez brothers bring legal action against Bud for the damages to them and the car. That he can believe his own code is the only important rule in his mind, but when living in this system, there's no way around the law no matter how you feel. While still being aggressive, Light finds his reasoning in other places. He lives by the book Diuretics, Science of Matter Over Mind. He says that he found it in a Maserati in Beverly Hills. I assume that he places value on the object because a rich person decided to read it. But he lives his life in limbo as he could have made it, but he missed his opportunity. He could have been a manager for a famous pop band before they had gotten big.
Manager the pop group? Hey. No job for no man.
But this statement feels heavily in contrast with his statement later in the film. That he would never fight in a war, and if he was drafted, he would change his identity to get out of it. That he would do anything to get out of fighting for his country, even though he would most likely see it as a man's job if he believes that being a pop band manager isn't. I feel like these two scenes emphasize Light's ideology. That he will live in the system, but he doesn't want to fight for it. He can be aggressive, but he won't give his life for a cause that isn't his own. In many ways, he is extremely similar to Bud. They are both ideologically rooted in their own beliefs and are quick to aggression to defend their beliefs.
I think I come to kill him in a wood. I'll kill anybody who crosses me. You know what I mean?
That they both indoctrinate Otto with these ideals as he is learning his way around being a Repo Man, similar to how his parents were trying to imbue him, just in a different fashion. Otto also comes across Miller initially after getting paid for his first Repo Man job. He hands him a happy tree and says,
Find one in every car. You'll see.
he says it as if Otto is going to come back. He later talks to Otto as he throws the book Light gave him into a fire. He brings up elaborate ideas, but they always lead to odd conclusions. That he believes everything in life occurs through a lattice of coincidence, that everything is meant to happen whether there was a reason or not, that it's all part of a cosmic unconsciousness, and that we're bound to the limits of our consciousness, unable to transcend. That the human brain gets caught up on specifics, that people are interested in conspiracy theories, the Bermuda Triangle, flying saucers, and time machines, that there's no difference between a flying saucer and a time machine. That there was a time before human existence, so where did the people come from? He believes that the people came from the future and fade into the past, but these people had to get to Earth at some point. He believes they were brought by flying saucers that are also time machines. So hearing all this come from a man's mouth that looks dirty, always wearing the same stained jumpsuit, then he is standing in front of a trash fire. He seems out of his mind. Otto feels the same way as he asks Miller if he used to do acid. Miller is also made to look like a liar when he brings up John Wayne.
John Wayne was a fag.
What'd you say, Miller? What?
John Wayne was a fag.
The hell he was!
Well, that doesn't mean he was a homo, Miller.
But Miller isn't really understood until the very end of the film. Once the Malibu starts glowing green, none of the scientists, agents, or the pastor can get near it without burning up. But Miller walks right up to it with no problem, as if it belonged to him. His face looked as if he was reunited with the car, as if the car was meant for him. Otto asks,
Miller, what are you doing?
Going for a little spin.
But you don't know how to drive.
He summoned Otto to the car as if he was sure he could drive the Malibu. Otto feels his call and starts moving towards the car, deciding to leave his new life behind to take a spin with Miller. As Otto gets in the car, Miller instantly knows how to drive it, sending it flying straight up into the air, then flying the car over the city. So it seems that we had been deceived by Miller. While he looked like a crackpot, he knew the answers, that the flying saucer and the time machine were the same thing, but how did he know this information? How did he know to drive the car? I like to think that Miller was just part of the cosmic unconsciousness, that you can't explain some things. Some actions don't have to have reasoning behind them. I think his character brings up two interesting points. With conspiracy theories, there can be some truth in what is being said, but most of it is dog water. That even those who would never expect to have the answers could stumble upon some truth even if they can't prove it. But also those who focus too hard on specifics will never be able to grasp an unconceivable idea. When Miller and Otto gave in, they gained access to the ship, while the feds, priests, and scientists were burned for approaching. Now I want to talk about the punks. They have an obsession with committing crimes and sniffing butyl nitrate.
Fuck this, let's go do some crimes.
Asshole!
Let's go do the job.
Come on, dude, let's go do those crimes.
Yeah, let's go get sushi and not pay.
The punks are contrary to both the Helping Hand Acceptance Corporation and the Rodriguez brothers. As they are both carjacking, they're doing it with protection from the law, but the punks are sticking people up unlawfully. Otto, after realizing he didn't want to work for the rest of his life, working up a small ladder at a corporate company, he could have gone two ways. He could take the opportunity presented to him to become a Repo Man, or he could have fallen into the same patterns as the punk committing crimes for money. But Otto didn't go to this extreme and instead chose to become a Repo Man. That Otto and the punks are all suburban kids that could have gone down similar paths, but a couple of bad choices led them to throw their lives away robbing and stealing for the duration of their short lives. In the same way that Kevin represents a life path he didn't follow, the punks do too. But I want to finish this on the scientist. A man is driven mad from creating the neutron bomb, that knowing your work is creating the most devastating technology that can be used on a human. A neutron bomb doesn't create a giant explosion that kills people. It dispenses huge amounts of radiation that slowly erode a person, but leave the building standing. That its one use is killing life, so knowing that this could be used on people because of your work could drive you emotionally distraught and insane, leading him to get a lobotomy. But now that he's worked on the bomb, he's become addicted to the radiation.
Radiation. Yes, indeed. You hear the most outrageous lies about it. Half-baked gogglebox do-gooders telling everybody it's bad for you. Pernicious nonsense. Everybody could stand 100 chest x-rays a year. They ought to have them too.
That he felt his mind go blank when he was removed from the project. Unable to be around the radiation, he decided to steal his project and expose it to the world. So what was inside the car? I have no idea. It seems from the scientists that you would be led to believe that it's a neutron bomb. This makes sense that when the truck's opened, it burns the person to death and the car is incredibly warm, but it's also open-ended in that everyone looking for the vehicle thinks it's a extraterrestrial's body. But then the car turns into a glowing flying vehicle. Well, this was my interpretation of events, which only leads to more questions than answers. I truly love talking about this film and hope you enjoyed taking this ride with me. Hopefully, I'll get around to making a video about Sid and Nancy in the near future. Alex Cox is an absolute legend. I could not recommend his films enough. Please drop a like or subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.